that are dry and flat, like this one here. It's dry and flat. So we mount it on a herbarium mounting sheet, which is this particular material. The dimension should be around 11.5 inches by 16.5 inches. So about 11.5 by 16.5 inches. Let's just think about it this way. You were born, right, and you never met plantains. Maybe your parents started telling you, during our days as children, there used to be these plants called plantains. It used to be very sweet. It was the primary delicacy as at the time. But you being born maybe in the early 2000s, and you just heard about plantains in the stories told by your parents, because maybe the plantains have been wiped out. Or maybe you have to go to a museum to just go and see plantains. How do you feel? How do you feel that you never met watermelons when you came to Earth? I mean, when you were born. For me, I wouldn't be happy about it. I would not. So that's why there is a need to keep some of these things. There's a need to preserve some of these things. And one thing I've come to understand is that there are different ways some of these plants could be preserved, right? They could be preserved in some cold rooms. Their seeds could be kept in cold rooms to make sure that they don't, like go extinct, or if something happens to the ones in the field. But then another way we could keep these things is in dried form. And that is where the herbarium comes into play. The herbarium is like a place, right? I call it the museum of plants. The museum. It's like a repository where dried plants are kept for reference purposes. So you just get plants, you dry them up, and you put them in a kind of sheet where people can access them and look at how they look like. I mean, this started way before the advent of AI, before the advent of internet technology and all of that. Because people needed to know, if I say Thallium triangulaire, for example, you don't know what it means, except, of course, I tell you that it's water leaf. But then if I say Thallium triangulaire, and I just tell you it's green, it's kind of succulent, is this, is that, but then I don't have anything to show you, I don't think you would actually have a picture of it. So that's why the herbarium was created as a repository of these plants, so that people can reference these materials. People can go to these places to see what these plants look like. But then why? Why do we have to keep it? I think that explained it. I was actually thinking, why don't we have to keep a herbarium? The first one is it's a reference material it provides reference materials for taxonomists. I mean, all those people that go around classifying plants, all those people that go around identifying plants, it's like where you find a new plant and you want to show people, you just keep it there, herbarium. Reference materials. Other taxonomists who are interested in classification and all of that could also come to you and go to your herbarium, or the city herbarium, or the university herbarium, and do all that. The second reason is that it's used for identification. You found this plant, you don't know what name it is. The herbarium and its resources could help you identify that particular plant. You can find any plant in the wild, the herbarium could help you do that identification. The next one is classification. In the herbarium, there are a lot of folders, folders where plants are grouped according to the families where they belong. So it's possible that as a taxonomist, as a plant science enthusiast, for you to take inspiration from there, and it will help you with the classification of the new plants that you found in the wild. It's also possible. So classification is one of the reasons why we need to keep a herbarium. And the fourth one is preservation. There are a lot of ways plants can be kept in the herbarium, though. They could be kept fresh or as dried specimen. Many herbariums actually keep gardens. So that is one of the ways that they can use to preserve very rare materials or plant materials in the particular environment. Let's say, for example, that we have this this set of plants like that are going extinct, or they're now becoming rare in our society or in environment. The herbarium which keeps it a garden, can help make sure that such plants do not go extinct or do not get totally removed from that environment. For example, we're having an issue with the mangrove plant. I mean, there's been this displacement of the mangrove by the Nipah palms. The Nipah palms look very beautiful, but they don't serve the same ecological function as the mangrove plants. So what we see is that the Nipah palms, which were introduced into Nigeria, for example, started displacing the mangrove plants. And now we have a lot of Nipah palms and less mangrove plants. But then it's also the duty of a herbarium that keeps a garden to make sure that such plants as the mangrove are, preserved and used to repopulate the mangrove ecosystem and the mangrove environment. To get a plant deposited in the herbarium, there are some techniques which we call herbarium techniques that we would or botanical techniques that we would employ to process these plants before they are ready to be deposited in the herbarium. One of the very first one is the identification. You need to identify the plant that you want to collect. Then you go forward to collecting the plant. That's number two. The third one is documentation. You need to have information about this particular plant. So the first one, like I said, is identification, plant identification. You need to identify, the name of this plant. You can't go and collect what you don't know. But sometimes, though, the reverse is the case where some people go collect plants and they don't know, and then they go identify it. So, but primarily, it's identification first. When you identify the plant, you can go further to plant collection, where you go to the field using some tools and all of that, and you collect the plant. And when we go to the field to collect plants, there are some key questions that we ask as plant collectors. So the third one is the plant documentation, where you write everything you know about this plant: the plant's name, the plant family, the geographical location, the habits and habitats of the plant. And then the fourth one is preservation. Under preservation, you talk about how do you keep these plants that you want to deposit in the herbarium from going bad? How do you preserve it from insect attacks and all of that? So that would be those we will talk about those four things on our way out, because I'm going out right now. So on my way out, we get to talk about those four things, the four botanical techniques before you apply to a specimen before it is ready to be deposited in the herbarium. When I said earlier that the four key botanical techniques that we use to process these specimens before they are ready to be deposited at the herbarium include the plant collection. Plant collection is the very first one. So we're out here in the field and we are trying to do a collection. To do a collection, or before a collector does a collection, there are about 3 key questions a collector is supposed to ask himself or herself before he or she makes that collection. The very first collection is what to collect. When you go to the field, what do you want to collect? So the collector has to ask that question. When you are going to the field to collect, what to collect answers, it's more like trying to tell you that you collect everything to show that this particular plant is the plant. If you're going to collect, let's say, mango, for example, and you collect just the leaf of mango, there are a lot of leaves of mango, the mango plants that look, like the mango plant. Monsoon longifolia, for example, looks like the masquerade plant. The leaves of the masquerade plant look like the leaves of mango. So if you just collect the leaf and you think this is what you've collected, then it's an error, because that does not entirely answer the question what to collect. So if you're collecting a plant, the primary question of what to collect has to be everything about that plant that shows that this is the actual plant that you collected. So if I'm collecting milkweed, for example, and I'm collecting it and it doesn't have this inflorescence, There are other leaves that are shaped like this, there are other plants that are shaped like this, that look like this, but this particular inflorescence helps with identification, and it answers the entire question of what to collect. What to collect. So this one too, this is a climber, or a runner in this case. This is a runner. If I'm to collect this particular plant, it means that I have to collect everything, because it's a small plant. What to collect? So if it's a big plant like this tree right behind me, of course I'm not going to collect the whole tree. I'm not going to uproot the tree. But if it's a small plant, I have to collect everything. Like this one, I collected everything from the roots to all of the leaves. It's a small plant, so it can fit into the herbarium sheet, right? This one is bigger than the milkweed, but I can fold it in zigzag form and fit it into the herbarium sheet. So what to collect? I have to collect everything if it's a small plant, or I have to collect all the parts of the plant that are diagnostic of that particular plant, that help identify that plant. So if I'm going to collect a mango plant, for example, I'm supposed to collect the bark, because it's a very big plant. This one is Trichulia africana behind me here. That is the breadfruit. So it means I'm supposed to collect the seeds of this particular plant. I'm supposed to collect the fruit of this particular plant. I'm supposed to collect part of the root of this particular plant, part of the bark of this particular plant, and some twigs showing the leaves and the flowers, possibly. So that answers the question of what to collect. The next question is where to collect. Where do I go to collect? I can't be trying to look for let's say a tree, and I'm going to a mountain to look for it. So I have to look for the natural habitat of that particular plant. That is where to collect it. Because if let's say a plant is an aquatic plant, it grows on water, and I find it somewhere on land, there will be a difference in the morphology of that plant, in how the plant looks compared to the ones that are in the natural environment or the natural habitat of that plant. So it means that the question of where to collect is that I have to go and look for the natural habitat of that plant. If it's an aquatic plant, it means I have to go to the water bodies where it is naturally, where its natural habitat is, to collect it. I can't go and look for it. Even if I find it on normal land or plain land, I'm not supposed to collect it there. I'm supposed to collect it in its natural environment. Is that fine? Then the third question is when to collect. When do you collect? You know, this question is trying to tell you that you are supposed to collect when the plant is in season. Why? Because we know that flowers actually are part of the diagnostic features of a plant. So if you're trying to collect a plant when it's not in season, you don't expect to see the flowers, you don't expect to see the fruits. So, but when you're trying to answer that question of when to collect, then you start thinking about collecting this plant when it's in season, because that way you collect it when it has the flowers, you collect it when it has the fruits, you collect it when all of its diagnostic features are present. So you need to have a kind of previous idea or knowledge about when this particular plant is supposed to be in season, and that is when to collect. So before you collect or you do a collection, you're supposed to have answered these three questions: what to collect, have the idea, when to collect, and where to collect. These are the three key questions a collector, a plant collector, a taxonomist in the field going to do a collection is supposed to answer before he does his collection. Then the next diagnostic tool, of course, we have a lot of equipment we use when we want to do a collection. You're going to the field, of course. You're supposed to have a GPS device, for example. You're supposed to have a shear or a knife, something to help you with collection. There are a lot of things. I can't make an exhaustive list right now, but then there are a lot of things that are supposed to be put into consideration before a collection is done. These are things you're supposed to have in your backpack or in your bag when you're going to make a collection. So the next botanical tool after that of plant collection is plant identification. How do I identify these plants that I have collected, right? Plant identification. You see, during the days of old, there is this dichotomous keys. There botanical keys that are used, a pair of questions that help you narrow down and identify the particular plant you've collected. But now this is 2025, and we are in the, we used to be in the jet age before. Now we are in the AI age. Everything is super fast, super clean, and nobody has the time to consult floras. Nobody has the time to do all of that. It's kind of like hard work. So one key that we can use AI enabled imaging softwares or platforms. For example, we have Google Lens. Google Lens you can just take a picture of the plant, and Google Lens can help you identify the plant. You can use PlantNet. It's also a software. I think it's on Play Store and the Apple Store too. You can download PlantNet and just take a picture of the diagnostic features of the plant, the flowers, the leaves, and all of that, and it will help you identify or make an almost exact identification of that particular plant. But then the best and the most recognized is that you go to a taxonomist who will help you identify the plants using some of their tools, some of their equipment, and all of that. So how do we identify the plant? You can use AI, you can use the dichotomous keys, or you could consult an expert taxonomist. So that is the second one, the second botanical technique. The third botanical technique is documentation. Documentation. You see, my professor would always say that a short pen is longer than a long memory. A short pen is longer than a long memory. Meaning that when you write something down, you are more likely to remember it than when you say, okay, I've memorized this particular thing. So when it gets to documentation, right there in the field, you are supposed to take note of certain things about this particular plant. Where did you find this plant? You're supposed to give us GPS coordinates of where you found this plant. You're supposed to describe this plant. You're supposed to tell us the habits and the habitat of this plant. These are some of the family of this plant, if you have that information already. You're supposed to also give us the name of this plant, if you've identified it, of course. But if not, you can leave that aside and just do a tag or a peg and, keep that going on. And that is that. So you are supposed to have the habits. I'd always ask people, what is the difference between habits and habitat? And some of the questions I always ask is plantain a tree? There's guava here behind me, guava. So is guava a tree? A lot of, even in the English language, they describe or they call guava a tree. But what we know in science, in botany, is that guava is not a tree. Guava is actually a shrub. And the main difference is seen between this very big covering here, and this particular guava behind me. The stem of guava started branching from the ground. Guava is not a tree because trees don't branch from the ground. So that's why guava is called a shrub. Even though it has wood, guava is called a shrub. But this other one, Trichulia africana, did not branch from the ground. It went up to a height before it started branching. And that's what we use to differentiate a tree from a shrub. And that is part of what we call the habit of the plant. So there are plants that are herbs because they are succulents, like plantain. Plantain is not a tree, in as much as it's a very tall, it's just a giant herb. So plantain is not a tree. So this helps us to describe, these are some of the things we call the habits of the plant. While the habitat of the plant is talking about where this plant lives. What type of environment does it live? Is it an aquatic environment? Is it a terrestrial? There are also some plants that live on top of, that live in the air, that hang from other plants or the walls and all of that. So this information are some of the information that is put in the documentation of the of a particular specimen that you've collected. We've done the very first step, which is the plant collection. We've done the plant identification, and we've done our note taking in the field. Now the next step would be plant preservation. How do we process this specimen to make it ready for depositing at the herbarium, the very first thing coming from the point of collection is to transport this specimen or this plant. And to transport this specimen, we're supposed to do that having the specimen flattened in the exact same position we would want them in the herbarium mounting sheets. So we use a plant press for that. So some persons go to the field with this, where these are just like a wooden lattice, about 2 wooden lattices, which you use a rope to tie. So you put the plants, press them, make them flat, and you use these wooden lattice. There are also some metallic or even possible plastic ones too. You use it to wrap around this particular the specimen that you've collected. So you transport your specimen like this. That way your specimen doesn't get fractured and all of that. So it comes in whole and flat, easy for you to mount. So this thing is called a plant press. A plant press is exactly what I'm holding. So when you transport your plant from the field, you either transport them already in plant presses, or you transport them in containers that will not kill the plant. It could be a see-through waterproof material that you use to make sure that the plant doesn't break, it doesn't fracture. But a plant press is best advice, is the best for the job. So when you get that, you go through the process of pressing the plant, which is you get to hold the plant in a particular flat position over a period of time and allow it to dry out. So you allow the plant to dry out, and you do this by putting the plants in between absorbent papers like this one. Well, here we are using newspapers. Newspapers are a bit absorbent, so they're able to take out the water from the plant while keeping it in that flat position, and use a rope to tie it just like it's done here. I'm not going to open this because these ones are not yet fully dry, so I'm not going to open this. So this in here is a plant specimen that are covered with absorbent paper. That is the newspaper, the old newspapers, and then with plant presses and a rope to hold them in place. And when we have such situation as this, we subject it to drying, and there are 2 ways we dry our plant specimen. It's either we do air drying or we do oven drying. Air drying, we just subject them to sun, to the heat from the sun, and allow them to dry in the open air. Or sometimes we could use a greenhouse. A greenhouse is just like a place that's made of glass, and the glass traps the heat, and we allow it to do the drying under the sun. And another way we could do the drying is oven drying. And here we have a small local contraption of an oven that's used to dry the specimen. So basically I have my specimen here, and I open this up and I drop it here and close it. So inside this particular oven we have light bulbs, the tungsten light bulbs that generated those yellow light bulbs. We have plenty of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6, 7 of them here in this particular place that's showing lights and when we are drying. So you could see some of the specimen being dried here. So we subject them to drying and under constant electricity. The heat applies the metal contraption, keeps the heat trapped in, and they dry over a period of time. So when that is done, we go further to the next step. So when the drying is done, we would have plant specimen that are dry and flat, like this one here. It's dry and flat. So we mount it on a herbarium mounting sheet, which is this particular material. The dimension should be around 11.5 inches by 16.5 inches. So about 11.5 by 16.5 inches. So we mount it using glue. Some persons may add other preservatives to avoid insect attack and fungal attack and all of that. So when we do this, we mount it here, we put our herbarium label. Our herbarium label has information about the plant. Some of the information we have collected when you were in the field. Information like the state you collected it. This one has river state, locality, what is the habitat code? Is it a terrestrial habitat, aquatic habitat, or arboreal? Then we have the species name. This one is Melokia species. The family name, the collector's name, what's the name of the person that did this collection. Then we have the determiner of it, the person that helps with the identification of the plant and all of that and all of that. So you have description of the plant, you have to describe, does it have whole leaves, is it a shrub and all of that. Then the common name of the plant. So these are some of the information that are contained in the herbarium label, this particular thing. I don't know if you can see here. This is the herbarium label. I'm not supposed to show all of the information, so I'll blur that out. So this is a good mounting. You could see the front and the back of the leaves are showing. So you don't just put everything with the front of the leaves showing. You show some of the front and some of the back of the leaves. So the front, the upper part of the leaf, the part facing the sun is called the adaxial surface. The adaxial surface of the leaf, and then you also show the lower part, the part that's facing away from the sun is called the abaxial surface of the leaf. So all of those are shown here, and as you can see, there's a bit of stem and some rooting. So I can see that this is a small shrubby because it's woody, so it's a shrub, but it's a very small shrub. So I think this is the whole plant. It's whole because it's all of the plant because it's a very small plant. Remember, under what to collect, we said you collect, if it's a small plant, you collect all of it, but it's a bigger plant, you collect some of the parts that are diagnostic of that particular plant. Is that it? Then we put it inside a cardboard that will, the family folder and species folder and all of that. So that is that. And when this is done, the next step will be to document, to store them away in folders, which is the data management part of the herbarium, the data management part of the herbarium, which is where we now take them away to different family shelves, different species shelves, and all of that. So I'll see you very soon. So we are currently in the herbarium, and you can see shelves, a whole lot of shelves here, and these shelves are alphabetically according to the family, according to the family of the plant. Like here you have shelf with the tag A. It means that every plant here belongs to the family, with the family that its name starts with the letter A, like the Asteraceae, where the Cremolena odorata belongs to, and the Aspilia africana, they belong to the Asteraceae family. So if I'm looking for Cremolena odorata, I'm supposed to come to this shelf. I'm looking for Aspilia africana because they both belong to the Asteraceae family. So this shelf A to C, and you know it gets to Z, which is, I think that's where the ginger family, the the Zingiber family, that's where the Z. We also have topological samples like this, where you have the seeds of some of these plants. So the herbarium is not just a museum for dried plants, it's also for preservation of seeds and all of that. So as you can see, this is an example of what a herbarium looks like, with all the shelves, with all the, you know, there are a lot of administrative duties that go on here. I just wanted you to have a look at it, and that'll be all for now. So why do we, what advantage do we have by keeping a herbarium? We could have educational uses where we use it for scientific studies and all of that. We could use it for a lot of things really. So I think this video is getting quite lengthy, and I would like to end it here. Remember, if you're not making numbers, your days are numbered. I am meaning numbers. I'll see you.